Catherine Traicos is an artist based on the west coast of Australia who has released 6 albums, which is extraordinary. The most recent of which was Luminaire in 2017, and she now has a brilliant new EP called Choose Your Own Light, and we're going to talk about it. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Sophie. How are you going?
I'm very well, thank you. I've been listening to your EP and there are so many different layers to it. I think I could listen to it 100 times and still find a new layer, but I'll try to talk about some of the layers I've heard when we're talking now. So the title of this EP seems timely, but also timeless, I think. We're all looking towards the light right now, I guess, after what's happened over the past couple of years, yet the idea of choosing one's own light is, I think, eternal. Has music itself been your light?
You know, that's a wonderful question. And I think that I'm going to say yes, even though I haven't always realized it.
Right.
Because I have, I think like a lot of artists, you know, a great deal of imposter syndrome.
Right.
And yeah, but I think music definitely has been my light as a listener and as a composer as well.
And so was it the experience of choosing your own light that actually led you to call it this? Because it's not the name of a track, actually.
No, it's not. It's a line in one of the songs. So in Accidental, right at the end, I sing I choose mine in terms of light, and that's about following your own path, and that's about relationships, and this tendency that a lot of people have to kind of pour a lot of themselves into another person or into a relationship. You know, I don't have any answers. I don't know how to fix that. But at some point, in certain relationships, there's that, well, I'm going to have to choose. It's you or me, and you know, you need to choose yourself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I suppose it can also, the meaning can work on a few levels, like as in light versus dark, but also just the idea of choose your own direction, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Your own light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. So
Now, your first instrument was piano, I understand.
That's right.
When did you start playing piano?
I was about 5, and I went to a music lesson, and the teacher said that I had a good ear, and she wanted to give me private lessons. I was in a group class, so you know, she was a lovely lady. And yeah, and then I played classical for a long time, and then I gave it up when I was a teenager and focused on subjects that I never ended up fully understanding, and went back to classical piano in my 20s. But in the interim, I kind of picked up a guitar and started writing songs, and yeah, that's how I got into music.
So when you were learning piano all those years, I imagine you were doing exams and, you know, you had to use all the grade books, all that sort of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. But I do remember the very first time my teacher taught me a minor scale, and my response was, why did it take her so long to teach me that beautiful scale? I love a minor key. So that was a turning point for me. I was just like, this is just the best.
I think it is that you know, unknowable part of music where you can respond so strongly to something that's a collection of sounds, and just tweaking them in a certain way can elicit that response.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you so when you found your way to guitar, well, first of all, I was thinking, as you said, you gave up piano. I thought, oh, your parents must have been quite disappointed after all those years.
I don't remember. I actually don't remember. I think it was okay. I think my parents are generally fairly supportive of all my impossible decisions, which is very lovely of them.
And of course, the years on piano would have meant you could pick up guitar faster, I imagine.
Maybe. You know, I can't read guitar music. Like I can figure it out, but I don't read music for guitar. And I find that my lack of knowledge on the guitar helps me write songs.
Okay.
And it's taken me a very long time to write songs on piano because I had too much, you know, there's too much right and wrong in my head of scales, keys, how they're, you know, modes and all that. And so it was really hard for me to just kind of write anything because I'd have all this other information coming through, as opposed to going on this gut instinct and a feeling, which is so important in writing a good song, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say the lack of knowledge on guitar, because a lot of people would say, oh, well, if I'm not really au fait with this instrument, I'm going to leave it alone and do something else.
That's when you should really write songs on it. Just, you know, pick up a banjo.
Do you think it that lack of knowledge, so to speak, because you're a wonderful instrumentalist, means that you give your voice some room to play around when you're writing songs.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that for years I've loved about guitars and stringed instruments is where they're different from piano is that you get those bits between the notes that are not notes in the Western system of intervals. And that was really great for songwriting. Now I've kind of gone the other way, and I really like the restriction of the piano and then seeing what that can do with my voice as well. So it is definitely about using it as a springboard to explore musically.
So at what age did you start singing? Because you had piano, you had guitar, and then voice is also an instrument. So when did that come along?
I like my whole life. And when I was in junior school, my sister and I were in the choir. And my parents were just like, no one in the family can sing, what's going on? And yeah, they always had to like kind of transpose what I was going to sing if I was a soloist down, because I have quite a deep voice. And I remember the first time the music teacher did that, I was so grateful. I was just like, oh, this is great, it's so easy to sing now.
Right.
That was a wonderful time.
Yeah. I suppose, yes, it suggests that there's a stereotype applied to girls' voices, because you started singing when you were a girl, like they should be high, they should be this, that, the other. But of course, there is a range of female voices in singing, technically.
That's absolutely right. Yes, definitely. And male voices. And the other night when I played a show in Sydney, I sang a duet with my friend Dan, who performs under the name Isles, and he's got a tremendously deep, beautiful voice. But we were covering a song, and he actually sung higher than me a couple of times, and it was great. Just that kind of, pushing around that, like those, in those different areas is fantastic.
And so when did songwriting start? Because you're accumulating this musical knowledge, you've got these instruments to write on. I'm always fascinated to know if it was a certain point where you just thought, I've got something to put down here, or if it was actually a conscious choice.
Well, I definitely started learning the guitar so I could write songs, because I looked, I never thought it was a possibility. But then I met people who were in bands and they were writing songs, and I was like, oh, I can do that, maybe. So I started learning guitar, and it actually took me a very long time to coordinate singing and playing. I could do one, but not the other. And I remember telling someone, and they were just like, looked at me like I was really like deficient. But it took me a while, and I don't mind that, because as soon as I could do that, I'd started writing my own songs. And a lot of that was because doing covers has never really interested me. There's a few bands that I found interesting to cover and that I could cover and feel like a sense of satisfaction. But mostly I was more interested in writing my own songs. So I just kind of sort of started right away. So it was probably about 3 or 4 months into playing guitar.
Well, I'd also suggest that when you learn classical piano, that's basically a lifetime of doing covers. It's always someone else's music.
Yeah, that's right. But yes, but there's also different interpretations, and they're so subtle with classical piano. And I do love listening to classical piano and different pianists' interpretations of pieces that are often just so similar, and you hear the slight differences, and you go, oh, and then you can choose which one you like more. And it's a lot of fun, actually. Those subtleties. Not that I could ever get to that level, but because it's like it's an elite sport, really, isn't it?
It is, yes. And I should also ask, when you went back to piano in your 20s, was it to play classical, or was it actually to do your own music?
Yeah, great question. It was actually to do jazz.
Okay.
And then try to bring that into my music.
Right.
Just because of my love of, Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday and Frank Sinatra. But I was terrible at jazz, and I didn't really like it. And I came to my piano lesson early one day, and my teacher was playing Chopin, and I was like, okay, I want to play that. So I just switched back to classical after, I think, 3 lessons.
I've also played piano for years, and Chopin is my favorite to play. Not my favorite to listen to necessarily, but they are very rewarding pieces, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love listening to it as well.
Well, I do like it, just not as much as Beethoven, who's my preferred composer.
Oh, really? Yeah, Beethoven's definitely the best. Like, he's definitely the top. And then Bach.
Well, I'm glad we agree, because if you said Mozart, I would have had to have an argument with you.
I do love Mozart. I do, but I don't feel that his piano pieces are as complex or as interesting as Beethoven or Bach or Chopin.
Yeah, true. But you also mentioned Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday, all of them amazing singers. And Sinatra, I think, is sometimes underrated as a technical singer because his tone is extraordinary.
He's wonderful. I love Frank Sinatra. You know, you can't listen to him and be in a bad mood. He puts a swing in your step.
That's very true. Possibly because all those songs suggest that he has a cigarette and a glass or something.
And he probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a reputation for keeping everyone awake. No one was allowed to go to bed. Everyone had to stay up and drink with him. So, no musicians.
Now, we've talked about piano and guitar, and you mentioned that you write a lot of songs on guitar, but for this EP, you actually wrote on piano. So what was it that led you back to that instrument to write?
Well, I think when COVID started, I was working on these distant songs with my band because I was in Perth and they were in Sydney, mostly with my guitarist, and I was really trying to write songs in a different way and make them as simple and pure as possible. And I wrote a few, and then it just it sort of seemed to stagnate. I didn't know how I'd get to Sydney to record. I really wanted to jam them out, and I couldn't do that. And then I just didn't write anything for ages. And I started listening to a lot of pop music. I don't know why. It just made me feel. I still do. I love listening to pop, and kind of, you know, just really pulling the songs apart and listening to them. And you know, I'm not really good on guitar. I can't play all the chords. I have to use a capo a lot, and on piano I can figure out chords super easy, and I can just play. So I was trying to figure out how pop songs were constructed because it's very difficult to write a good one. And I just went to the piano naturally to do that. And then there was this period of time where I was stuck in a room for 2 weeks, and I moved a piano, my keyboard in there. Not my piano, it's the keyboard, and I just started writing songs, and it was fun. You know, I wasn't really seeing anyone. I was, you know, I wasn't isolating. I was looking after my cat, who was very sick, and she had a cone, and she kept pulling it. So I was like, I have to stay with her because if she pulls her cone off, she'll pull her stitches out, and so I just had to stay with my cat, and so I just wrote songs for 2 weeks, and there were about 8 or probably actually about 10 of them, and I'm going to record the other ones at some point.
So did you think after that, I should have been writing on piano all this time, or it just seemed like, okay, this is the right occasion, the right period of my life to be on it?
Yeah, it felt like the right period of my life because I have tried so many times and then just walked away going, no,
Right.
no, terrible, bad. Yeah, so.
And I'm interested, when you said you listen to a lot of pop, which pop artists do you listen to?
At the time I was listening to Billie Eilish, who I love. She's just fantastic. She's an excellent songwriter, and her voice, like the way it's recorded, it sounds so vintage. It's beautiful. So I really like Billie Eilish. I like Taylor Swift a lot. She released those 2 records that she recorded in the woods. They're just beautiful, and I've always liked her stuff because she started out country, and I really love country music. And you know, a lot of her songs, like her really good songs, have that element to them. So they were probably the 2 main ones. Who else was I listening to? I just sort of listened to whatever I could.
Yeah.
You know, you just start listening around. I was teaching music as well, and so you kind of ask the kids what they're listening to, and then you have a listen. And you go, okay, and they listen to a lot of old stuff. They're really into like, the other day there was like some year 10 singing that I can't even remember what it's called, the 4 Non-Blondes song.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean. The details elude me.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but what's going on?
Yeah.
And I was just like, how are you all singing this? This is so strange. So there's a lot of, you know, retrospective kind of things happening in music, which is great.
Maybe they're on TikTok. I don't know where the kids are getting their information these
days. Yeah. I think it must be, yeah. TikTok, I don't really like it.
Fair enough. It is a particular art form or some form.
Yeah, I mean, I like the videos. I think they're really funny. But what I don't like is when I open the app on my phone, it stops my music and it just blasts stuff at me. And I'm like, I need to control that. I can't be surprised by, I don't know. And it's like, it seems like advertising. and that annoys
because
me.
it usually is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you referred to this earlier about structures, I think, or boundaries in place. And there was something you said around the release of the EP, which is art needs a leash, but there is a sense of freedom you can achieve when you instigate new boundaries and allow yourself to clear up other areas. I'm a believer in the idea that structure actually is very freeing, because I think it eliminates a lot of toing and froing when you're constructing a story, whether it's a novel or a song. Have you always liked having boundaries like that, or is this just something you've come to appreciate with time?
No, I've always loved having boundaries like that. And I think because I started out as a visual artist, it came from that, that kind of, you do all these exercises to free yourself up, which is, like drawing with your eyes closed, drawing with your opposite hand,
Right.
and that sort of thing kind of. And then from there, it's almost like you set these rules in place, but they're not real rules, and you get to choose them. And it's kind of fun. And it's all about the concept that you can come up with. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree. I love structure.
But also, I wonder if it's to do with your classical piano background, because that piano is a very structure-laden discipline. But also what you were saying about the nuances within recordings of particular pieces. Like you might have 5 Moonlight Sonatas recorded, and they will all have their differences, and so there is that creativity within the structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great point. Actually, it could be that. But I think that would be just a feature of that. I don't have the control to play that sort of thing on piano really, without putting a lot of work in, and I haven't done that in a while. But yeah, there is definitely that sort of structure in classical piano that could have influenced me. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind betting, Catherine, if you sat down to play Moonlight Sonata, I know you probably could play it extremely well, because it would be embedded if you did all those years.
Yeah, I do love that one. But I think I might just like play the chords and just like see what's going on, and then just kind of look at the chord progression, and then kind of, figure out if I could write a song based on those chords. Could be fun.
What a great idea.
Yeah, it might be really hard to not be sounding like a really bad version of it. I'll see. I'll try tomorrow, actually.
Now, to be more specific about the EP, Choose Your Own Light, the first track is Take You Places.
Yeah.
And it's about addiction and depression, yet sonically it's actually a really uplifting track. So I'm wondering if it started out that way.
It did. They were all uplifting. And when the lyrics came, I was like, really? Is this what's happening? And then I just went with it. Because the lyrics worked. And I think that there's a sense of just abandon when you go, okay, well, I was trying to be there for you. You clearly were not interested. I'm really glad I'm free now. Yay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because I think, as you said, yes, the whole EP is uplifting. And with that track in particular, I was listening to it thinking, I wonder if it is, yes, that freedom in saying, all right, good luck to you. I'm out of here. But also an element of trying to show that person that there is another way to live. Like I can be this uplifted, and I don't have to be like you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing with that song was often when I write songs, I learn about my life, and I think that's a fairly common thing for artists. I remember reading about, I can't remember which painter it was, and they said every time they did a self-portrait, they figured out what was going on in their life. Right. It's like art is like a mirror, it reveals your life to you. And when I wrote this, I was just like, that's why it hurts so much. It's because I can the relationship, because I could see, like, I was trying to give this person love, and I could see the beauty and the joy in love, but they were just like, well, I just really like being drunk, and that's where all my joy and beauty comes from. And I was like, but you can have both, and why not have both?
Because one's probably easier, in inverted commas.
I think, yeah.
As in, it's a simple transaction, drinking.
Absolutely, it is. And also at that level of drinking, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. Yeah, so
very true. And also just because they're all uplifting songs, and given the time you wrote them in, which was during the period of the past couple of years, I'm wondering if it was something that you were writing for yourself, in that that's what you needed at that point in time.
I think definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Because I was working very, very long hours and commuting a long way. And like my whole day was other people's music, and it was very noisy, because teaching kids music is really noisy. It's like a it's a loud thing to do. And so coming home and working on these songs and kind of shaping them really, it just allowed me to kind of create something that was mine, and it was like a, yeah, different, and I wanted to make it beautiful. So that was fun.
And when you record your songs, do you like to get them to a finished point before you take them into the studio, or do you allow space and time for them to change once you're recording?
Both. So some are very clear, they're like, this is the way I am, and they don't want to change. And others, there's a lot of room to record, like move around. So with Too Wild, that sounded very different before the studio. It was quite melancholy and very stark. And the producer, Woody, was just like, oh, well, I've got this bass line that I just wrote last night, and it's quite jaunty, and yeah. And I was like, okay, cool, let's go with it. So I'm always very open to, well, I'm often very open to exploring new musical avenues with people I'm working with. Like, I don't like to be a complete dictator unless I've come up with something and I'm like, no, this is good, we have to work with this.
But I would imagine it is a bit like being in a critique group, to be in a studio with a producer saying, oh no, I think we should do this. So it would be understandable if there's a little twinge of reticence when someone says something to you.
Yeah, I think working with producers, you kind of want to get to know them a bit first and see if you can work together. And I've been really lucky. I've like had amazing experiences where I've just really like had good syncing kind of mindsets with most producers. There's been a couple of times where I've just been like, can you change your guitar tone? And they just won't do it. And I've been like, why won't you just change your guitar tone? But you just let it go. I don't know. It's not worth it.
But I would also think for some, particularly because someone as experienced as you with instruments, a request to change a tone.
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but have you ever met guitarists? I mean, oh, like he's a very good guitarist. Yeah.
Very good guitarist playing on your song. So
I know. It didn't bother me. It still sounded good. It was just a different sort of a sound in the end. And I'm always, I'm often open to kind of just going, well, let's try this. But sometimes I'll write something and I know how it needs to go, and then it has to go that way.
Right. And when it comes to interpreting these songs in a live environment, are you open to change again? So when you're rehearsing them, the songs might shift?
Yes, definitely. And you respond to audiences. And if you're working with different musicians, you see what you can do. You're like, well, what can we actually do live with this setup? And that's always a fun challenge to kind of recreate and just do things differently. And there was one song in particular I remember years ago, I recorded with my band, and then we toured it, the album, and by the end of the tour we were like, the live version of the song was so much better. And we had a friend coming on stage and playing synth with us, and he just he changed it up every night kind of thing. And then we just thought we should record it again.
Right.
And I'm actually having that with Be Bad at the moment, from this EP, which I've started playing live with some people. And it just sounds quite different. Like we've got this interesting guitar arrangement, same keyboard player. And yeah, we're thinking of re-recording it or doing a live album, something.
Well, you said there are some songs that didn't make it onto the EP. So, it's an opportunity to remake a song that already is.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So maybe we'll see.
So it sounds like you're very much an artist who is open to different pathways, to opportunities, to ideas. Has there ever been a time where the channels felt closed?
Well, yeah, like I am open to an extent. I'm very picky about who I will work with.
Okay.
So, like I will go, I'm going to work with, this amazing cellist, and then I'm open to whatever he wants to bring to it. But I won't be like, I'm open to any cellist, because, they might come with all these, different ideas about what to do with my songs. And, I recently made a distance recording in Nashville.
Right.
And worked with Nashville session musicians. Their approach was very Nashville, and it's that sound. And it was a really wonderful experience, but it's not the same as when I work with my friend Gareth, who he'll write multiple lines of cello, and it's just unique and interesting and amazing. So, I mean, the Nashville one was amazing as well, but in a different way. So, I'm open, but also, you know, only now I can kind of have the freedom to say that, because I've put all those boundaries in place along the way.
Yeah.
I've been to some terrible jam sessions. You know, and I think a lot of musicians have, and that's music. You know, you find people you connect with and you work with them. If you don't connect with them, you shouldn't try.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just be friends. It's fine.
I think it's a good policy for any work, actually, if one can arrange it that way.
Yes.
So you mentioned that your band's in Sydney, but you are in Perth, and
Formed a new band in Perth. Now
you have? Did you say? Yeah. Right. So, because I was going to ask, what is the music scene like in Perth? You know, a lot of us don't live on the west coast of Australia, and I have really no sense of what's happening there. So, is it vibrant? Are venues supportive of live music?
Yeah, well, you know, the Perth music scene's got a great history. It's always been some amazing bands have come out of it. And I think it suffered during COVID as well. Like, even though WA wasn't that shut down, it was only mostly closed off to the rest of the world. There was a time where venues were closed, and then they started to open up, and not many people were going to gigs. It still feels a little bit flat, to be honest, but more people are going to gigs, more bands are playing again, and I don't know, I feel like I've become part of a musical community just through gigging and meeting different songwriters, and that's been wonderful. Like, you know, it's really great to have that happening. Yeah, so I think it'll just get better. I really do.
Yeah. So you had 3 shows in support of this EP already. Are you planning some more?
No, we'll just do the 3. So okay. I've done one, and then there's Melbourne next week, and then a Perth show. Yeah.
Right. See, I was reading the press release in my mind, they were already over. No, the year is not as far gone as I thought it was.
Yeah. So the 6th of October is the next one.
Okay. Well, the EP is Choose Your Own Light, and it is a wonderful, uplifting EP, as we have discussed, and as I said, multi-layered, and I've found myself thinking about it when I'm not listening to it, and then going back to it and then thinking about it again. So I think for anyone who likes music that will, it's not hard thinking either. I was going to say, it's just thinking. It's thinking and music. So for anyone who likes music that will give them all of those layers and feels and feelings, this is the one for them. Catherine, it's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Pleasure.